All right, the first thing I need to do is go through and solve all of these expressions. So before I do that, I want to remember my three rules that we worked on for order of operations. Rule number one, I perform the operations inside the parentheses. Then I multiply and divide from left to right. Then I add and subtract from left to right. And then this would be what it looks like. I start on this side and I move over to the right. So I'm starting on the left, moving to the right. So let's look at our first expression that we have. All right, so our first one is 64 divided by 7 minus 3 in parentheses plus 120 divided by 3. So if I go back to my rules, I know that I need to do what's in the parentheses first. So first thing I'm going to do is subtract 3 from 7. Once I do that, I have 64 divided by 4 plus 120 divided by 3. Well, now I have two division signs, but I know from my rules I need to work from the left to the right. So I am going to do 64 divided by 4, and you saw that right there. 16 is 4 into 64. Now I'm adding 120 divided by 3. So now I need to do 120 divided by 3. So when I look at that, I need to think of how many times 3 goes into 120. Well, I know that 3 goes into 12 4 times, and I know whatever I multiply by a 10 will add another 0. So I know that if I add a 0, I would have that 3 goes into 120 40 times. So now I have 16 plus 40. So I do my addition and I get my expression simplified down to 56. So that's the first expression I have an answer for. All right, the next expression that I need to solve is 7 plus 19, take away 4, divided by 0.3 or 3/10. So I go back to my rules. The very first rule is I need to do what is inside the parentheses first. So when I take 19 away from 4, now I have 7 plus 15 divided by 3/10. Well, now I need to do my division. So let's review how we do our division when our divisor is a decimal. So I need to move that decimal because it's a lot easier to work with my whole numbers. So to make 3/10 a whole number, I times it by 10, and that moves my decimal point over one space. So now I have a 3 instead. But if I am changing the 3, I need to also change my 15 because I multiplied this by 10, so I need it to stay the same values. So I have to multiply my dividend by 10 as well. So that gets me 150. I just added that 0 onto my 15, and I have 150 now. So when I divide that, I know that 3 goes into 15 5 times, and when I take that away, I get 0. So I just bring that 0 up. So 15 divided by 3/10 equals 50. All right, now I see I can do my addition. So I have 7 plus 50. Since 15 divided by 3/10, 15 divided by 3/10 is 50. So now I can simplify my expression down to one number, and that would be 57. All right, here's the next expression. I have 32 divided by 4, take away 4 times 2. I don't have any parentheses in this one, so I can skip step 1 and move to step 2, which is multiply and divide from left to right. So over here is my left side, and when I come over, I hit this division sign before I get over to the multiplication. So this is the first step in my expression. So when I do 32 divided by 4, I get 8. So now I have 8 take away 4 times 10. Well, now I'm going to do my multiplication because it comes before I add or subtract. So now when I simplify, I have 8 take away 8 because 4 times 2 equals 8. I can simplify that down now. I can do 8 take away 8. I have one number, and that is 0. So this expression simplifies all the way down to 0. All right, here is our last expression for our problem that we need to solve. I have 2 parentheses this time, but my rule tells me that I need to work from left to right. So I am going to start right here on the left side, and I'm going to do 1 and 8 tenths plus 2 and 2 tenths first. Then I'm going to do 4 take away 3 tenths. So right here you can see that I have added 1 and 8 tenths plus 2 and 2 tenths, and I have gotten 4, and I still have my 4 take away 3 tenths. So I did my first expression over here first, and now I can do this one. Now, to remind us how we do this, I need to line up my decimal points. Now, I used zeros to hold those places. Now, I can add these zeros because it doesn't change the value of my numbers. So once I've added those, it makes it easier for me to do my subtraction. I have to change that 0 to a 10, so I need to borrow a 10 from my 4. So I add that 1, and I cross out the 4, and I make it a 3, and then I get 3 and 7 tenths for that answer. All right, now I need to multiply 4 times 3 tenths. So when I do that, I don't think about the decimal point. Remember, with addition and subtraction, we line up the decimal points. But in multiplication, we can forget about that decimal point and do our multiplication first. So when I do 4 times 7, I get 28. And then when I do 30 times 4, I get 120. When I add those numbers up, I get 148. But I can't forget that decimal. Now that I'm at the end, I have to add that decimal back in. I had 1 decimal place value and 3 and 7 tenths. So I just need to put that decimal on, on this side of the problem. So on 8, and then I move it over. This is hard to do backwards. I have it on the 8, and I move it over 1 decimal point. So that would make that answer 14.8. So this is what I am simplified to. I went from this expression up here, and I simplified it all the way to 14 and 8 tenths. All right, here are all the answers that we got from our expressions. The first expression we did, we got 56. The second one, we got 57. The third one, we got 0. And the fourth one, we got 14 and 8 tenths. Now it's a lot easier for me to put these in order from least to greatest. So the first equation I'm going to put is the third equation that we did when we got 0. Then I would put the fourth one, then I would put the first one, and then I would put the second one. Now if you took note, if you had your scratch paper and you kept everything organized, you would be able to see this really easy. But on this certain problem, you have to do all the expressions before you can actually get the answer.